It's time now for perspective. Across much of the Arab world, traditional male-female gender roles are very much entrenched, with homosexuality very much taboo, if not illegal. But the reality is that queer culture has a very rich history across the Middle East and North Africa, with today's younger, non-conformist Arab generations increasingly keen to challenge the status quo and affirm a range of non-binary, non-heteronormative identities. And the internet is a key tool in that mission. My guest today is Khalid Hadi, visual artist and editor-in-chief, and also creative director of online magazine My.Kali. Thank you so much for being with us here on France 24. It's a pleasure. What exactly is My.Kali and how did it come about?
My.Kali is a digital conceptual publication. It claims a digital space and creates a safe space for people who are non-conforming, queer, feminists, and it's basically a platform that documents the stories of the queer people in the Middle East and North Africa.
And on your website, you say that your aim here is to address address a range of social problems and empower the youth to defy mainstream gender binaries. Of course, the Arab world is vast, many different communities, different cultures, but there are entrenched gender norms. Why are they so entrenched in the Arab world, do you think?
Because many people have a certain way of looking at gender, and unfortunately, we don't have not yet a lot of examples that break that stereotype, even though the social community regarding the LGBT community and the feminist community is trying its best to actually break that gender stereotype among the Middle East and North Africa. But this is all recent, so our history was very, very specific towards how we view gender.
And you set up this site when you were very young. I think you were 17 years old.
Yes.
Was it hard to set up a site with this sort of mission statement?
Not at all. I grew up in a household where honesty was very much on the table. So it was difficult for me to actually lie. And it was very natural for me to actually tell my parents about who I am and what I am without knowing the context of what homosexuality actually means. And creating a space like My.Kali was a very natural move because there was a lack of these spaces and resources. So it was naturally for me to create them along with a collective.
And this site is a huge opportunity for homosexual people, non-binary people, feminists to come together in an online space. How important is it for you to create these digital online spaces for people in non-conformist communities in the Arab world?
It's extremely important because our history did not really document the stories of women and the stories of homosexual, like LGBT people, basically. And sometimes it makes me really furious as an editor, as an individual, that the history did not really document these stories that are absent now in our present. So it's extremely important to create such inclusive spaces and to make sure like these stories remain in our present and for the future to come. So I really value these sort of spaces to actually be present with us.
And you say that your site is intended to represent a huge range of communities, of gender identities. Do you find ever that, say, feminists have a hard time sharing a platform with gay rights activists, or do you think there is a real sense of solidarity among these smaller constituent groups?
So there's a huge debate about these questions that you just asked, but at the same time, the activist and the feminist community really sees the queer and the feminist movement from an intersectional point of view. And it's very important that we do not separate these issues because they are very they intersect and they face the same sort of dilemma in our societies. In addition to actually having like queer and feminist readers, it's very important for us as well that the publication is not intimidating to the non-LGBT readership, because we don't want the information to circulate just around the feminist and the queer community. We also want it to circulate among the main public, basically.
And do you know if it's been successful in that? Do you know that non-LGBTQ plus people are reading, going to your site, enjoying, interacting with your content?
We get a lot of letters from people who are non-LGBT, and they say like they can relate to some of our content, or that they didn't understand how it is to be LGBT, or the struggle of it, or the importance of actually discussing these issues, because again, there's a lack of these informations surfacing in the main public, specifically in our region, in Arabic, within the Arabic context and language.
And you make a point of showcasing what you call uncensored voices. How much opposition have you faced from people in power, from governments, to what you do?
Constantly, but it's an unspoken language between me and the government. Or us and the government, I can't say like me specifically. But at the same time, we have faced our certain issues with like censorship. For instance, we are censored in Jordan, we are censored in Qatar, we are censored in Gaza for I don't know why in Gaza specifically. You know, they have other important issues to focus on, but these and other issues that we face with the government. You know, in attempt to actually many times to actually block the website.
And when you talk about censorship, are you talking about censorship of specific content,
No,
or the
whole
site going
website.
down entirely?
Not going down, like it can't be accessed in Jordan. We of course have our way around it, but at the same time, I don't want to keep. My focus is not to challenge governmental decisions all the time, and it's mainly focused towards the community.
And have you had any instances where, in places where the site's been taken down, you've succeeded in getting it back up? Places in which attitudes are slowly but surely evolving?
So you have so many options on the internet. So for me, yes, it was very concerning when it became censored, because I didn't know how to actually work that through. But at the same time, there was so many other options that we can use. Social media, for instance, mirroring the website, or using other mediums to actually distribute the content that we have.
And just how crucial do you think social media has been in amplifying the voices of marginalised communities in the Arab world?
Oh, many. I remember in 2014, there was a YouTube channel in Jordan that published a very homophobic video in the name of comedy. And I remember we published an open letter, and we got so much responses towards it, where people really opposed the idea of using homosexuality as like part of comedy. And it was almost like a virtual demonstration against such things. So social media did help many people who cannot say it publicly or in the streets to actually voice it on social media, including distributing the information and sharing it privately and publicly as well.
And are there any countries in which attitudes towards homosexuality, non-conformist gender identities, any countries in which that's changing more than other countries? Are there any countries you look at and you think, this is positive change?
Yes, in the civil society in Tunis is very, very promising, and the things that they are doing is extremely important, and they're very engaging with the public. They do not segregate they do not segregate the public from what they do, and they're very, very communicative towards the information they put out there. Palestine is doing an amazing job with the organizations that are talking about pinkwashing, and how the occupation is not very separated from discussing how colonial theory actually affects homosexuality within the context of Palestine.
And conversely, are there any countries where you see things getting worse?
Politically, maybe, because it affects the whole public in general, but not at all. Actually, in Iraq last year, or when the revolution started, there was a huge movement for the queer community in Iraq, where because the government in Iraq used homosexuality to dismantle or to discredit the revolution. And many people of the queer community were speaking out against that kind of strategy that the government is using. That's it. Yeah.
Well, that is actually all we have time for. So thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you
here
so much
today.
for having me.
A real pleasure to speak to you, Khalid Hadi, editor-in-chief and creative director of online magazine My.Kali. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
A reminder now of